Welcome to Optily Radio, your regular 30-minute dose of everything you need to accelerate your e-commerce marketing success.
Hi, I'm Nina White, your host for Optily Radio, the podcast that we've created in order to help you accelerate your e-commerce marketing. With a small business, you know how hard it is to get noticed. Thankfully, there are a lot of options that both big advertising platforms and the e-commerce platforms themselves provide to make getting seen easier. A solution like Optily's platform that instantly recommends and applies optimizations to your existing ad campaigns can help you make the most of your marketing budget, while also freeing up your time to focus on growing your business. We're sure you'll see results within days of trying it out, so we're letting everyone have a go at it for free with our 2-week trial. So make sure to check it out at optily.com. If you've had enough of wasting your time and money on Google and Facebook ads that aren't helping your bottom line, that is. Today, we'll talk you through everything you need to know about how local search marketing and the steps you need to take to ensure as much visibility as possible without breaking your small business bank. And just an apology before we dive into today's conversation. There is a crew of construction workers fixing my roof just outside my window. So if you hear any random clattering and banging in the background, that's what that is. Unfortunately, these are the realities of working from home these days that we have to live with. So without further ado, let's get started with our discussion on local search tactics. In the virtual studio today, we have Greg Sterling. Greg has been working in search, particularly local search marketing, for over 2 decades. He's recently finished up his 14-year tenure as contributing editor at Search Engine Land, and currently Greg is working on developing content and exposing trends for online to offline marketers and small to medium-sized businesses as VP of Market Insights at Uberall. You can follow Greg on Twitter with the handle at @gsterling and stay on top of all things relating to local search trends. And from the Optily team, we have our co-founder and chief product officer, Keith O'Reilly. Keith is an award-winning product innovator and has over 20 years of experience in product development and advertising across online, offline, in-store, and social media. So welcome to the show, Greg and Keith.
Thank you.
Thanks. Great to be here.
So hopefully the weather is starting to warm up over in, you're in California, right, Greg?
Yeah, it's the last 2 days have been beautiful, right in line with the first days of spring. We had a whole bunch of rain before that, but it's beautiful now. Although I'm an allergy sufferer, so it's a mixed,
Oh no,
very mixed experience for me.
Well, great. Thank you so much for joining us. It's an early time in the morning for you. So
yes, and my appearance doesn't reflect that at all.
Super. Well, why don't you start off by telling us a bit about yourself, your background, Uberall, and just generally how things have been in the past year during the pandemic.
Right. So the short version of my my CV or bio is I was originally a lawyer. I did civil litigation for almost 10 years in Los Angeles and San Francisco, which I absolutely hated, and then transitioned into content. I'd always been a writer, and I transitioned into content, and that got me into internet businesses. And I've became, over the subsequent years, kind of an analyst and researcher, and really fell into the small business digital marketing space. But that's an area that I developed a lot of expertise in, but also the broader sort of framework of consumer behavior and how the internet influences offline purchases and offline activities, which is the world we're definitely living in right now, even more after COVID, or as we emerge, hopefully, from COVID. And so Uberall, very briefly, is a company based in Berlin with offices. Who knows if they'll remain throughout Europe and North America. And what Uberall does is it manages business listings data, business reputation, has products like landing pages and other products to help with this online to offline experience. So businesses with physical locations, whether they're small businesses or large enterprises. We mostly manage small businesses through partners, and the business has grown very very rapidly. But it's been a very challenging year, as it has been for many people, on a range of fronts. So I haven't been back to the home office for, for well over a year. I haven't seen anybody that I work with other than on these video calls, which is the same for everybody. So, and I've been working incredibly hard continuously, for the past year. So that's, I'm tired.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, I've started back in November. I haven't met anyone at Optly face to face other than super briefly to get, a monitor and a computer off the street. So, yeah, it's definitely interesting working, with people so far away, different time zones and everything. But yeah, it's definitely been a weird year. And on that note, it has been incredibly rough, especially for small businesses. So what are some, big trends that you've noticed in the past year that have sort of worked for kicking, e-commerce up to, the huge levels that we're seeing as a result of this pandemic?
So when we talk about e-commerce, we really should sort of expand the lens, to mean, online delivery of services as well, because a lot of small businesses are service businesses. So online booking,
Mm-hmm.
video conferencing, online appointments, virtual classes, virtual consultations, that kind of thing. I described it in one of my, Search Engine Land articles. I described, the coronavirus as like the asteroid that hit that hit small businesses. It really was, because small businesses for years and years and years have been given advice to get online and to enable e-commerce, but this really compelled them to do so. So, the businesses that were selling products either had to find marketplaces where they could sell products, Etsy, Amazon, eBay, elsewhere. Uh, they had to enable shopping carts on their own sites, or they had to build new sites. Shopify is a huge story, obviously, one of the big winners of the COVID. Or they had to adopt tools that made it possible for them to deliver services, and that was somewhat easier, I think, than building new websites or integrating e-commerce tools into your existing website. Adopting Zoom or Google Meet or another video chat platform. Um, some of them had to integrate online booking and online food ordering. One of the restaurant industry is obviously one of the high profile stories. Food delivery, online ordering, um, and then Facebook Shops is another story, another interesting story. Facebook and Instagram Shops, which was developed predominantly, though not exclusively, for small business. But then that's part of a larger trend towards social, what people are calling social commerce, direct buying on social media sites. So it's really a sort of a sink or swim situation for people.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very Darwinian, really, in a way.
Yes, I have a friend and colleague who really objects to that expression.
Oh,
But I agree with you that it is just Darwinian in the sense that natural selection here by the consumer, will enable businesses to survive or not survive. But he feels there are larger structural forces in the marketplace that are also playing. But it is quite Darwinian that you do need to adapt or not survive. I agree with that.
and do you think it's a permanent change? Do you think things have changed permanently, or when COVID disappears, will things resume as business as normal? Do you think?
Well, this is obviously one of the huge questions. I was getting, we got Chinese food last night. We tried a new Chinese restaurant in our area, and we parked across the street. Not takeout, takeaway. And so we parked across the street, and there was a restaurant with people dining indoors, and I was shocked to see it. It was like seeing a naked person on the street. It was like, oh my God, these people are actually eating in the restaurant, with many of them without masks. It was literally just like I was taken aback by it. I think there's a lot of pent up demand among consumers, among people, to get back to something that resembles their old lives, right? Dining in the restaurant, travel, going to theaters. And there's been some articles about theaters reopening in Los Angeles,
Mm.
and people are just exhilarated to go to the movies, whatever the film is, right? And so there's this kind of sentiment, and there's an expectation that people will be going back to retail stores and traveling when it's possible and all this stuff. And I think that's true, but I think the world has changed permanently. I think we're not likely to see, you know, we're not likely to see people doing e-commerce to the exclusion of traditional retail, but we're likely to see some blended reality, which we can talk about more, where consumers are selective, they're careful at least initially, and certain things have changed forever. You know, working from home is an example of that. Cinema movies may be quite different with streaming taking on such a you know, accelerating. But we won't know for sure until people actually feel comfortable returning to stores. But you know, let's take an example of you know, buying something like we have pets, so I buy a lot of pee pads for pets, right? So if you're familiar with what that is, yeah. So that's kind of a vulgar example, but it's an example of something that's representative. So I'm just going to keep buying those on Amazon. I might have gone to the local pet store and bought those physically and taken the box home, but now I'll just buy them routinely on Amazon. And there are a lot of product categories that are like that, where we're going to just continue. You know, some people are subscribing to those for regular delivery, but a lot of people will just buy certain kinds of things online, and that's going to be it. And then other things will require an in-person visit, or, you know, touching and feeling, or closer examination. But the categories of things that people started buying online this past year has expanded dramatically, and the numbers of people who are buying online, first-time shoppers, expanded quite dramatically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had a Barry Schwartz on the show a few weeks ago. I understand you two are friends.
No, it's incorrect. Yes, we are. Yeah, no. I worked with Barry for the entire 15 years. I mean, albeit vicariously. We only saw each other at conferences, but yeah, no. Mm-hmm. Barry is someone I like very much and respect, and I'm sure he had interesting things to say.
Yep. Something that came up during that chat was, you know, the future of e-commerce with like a smart mirror in the bathroom where you just say, you know, brushing your teeth, you need more toothpaste or toilet paper, and the smart mirror just, you know, immediately kind of orders for you, similar to those sort of dash buttons that I don't think those really caught on too much, but something like that, you know, just Alexa, order more toothpaste kind of thing, just very automated, simple things like that.
Well, I think that sort of smart mirror scenario is farther out. I mean, those kinds of things creep people out to some degree. I mean, the really interesting thing that you introduced there is the idea of these smart speakers, smart displays, and their role in e-commerce. I mean, you know, when those came out, everybody sort of assumed that there would be rapid. There has been rapid adoption, although it's sort of leveled off, but people assume that those would be commerce devices or brand advertising devices. And that really hasn't materialized. I mean, the surveys say 30% are buying things with Alexa or Google Home, but it's really not true. People are not doing e-commerce with those devices, which is kind of interesting and strange. And, you know, some of these futuristic scenarios will come to pass, but it always sort of takes longer than people anticipate. You know, the virtual reality is an example of that, right? Much hyped, but really hasn't materialized outside of gaming. But augmented reality is becoming a thing.
It's fascinating,
especially in a retail context. That's one of the things that's quite interesting. I mean, you talk about smart mirrors. The closest thing we have to that is the augmented reality makeup try-ons, the virtual try-ons. That kind of thing is really interesting. That's a way that people, you know, that exists in stores, and, you know, on your mobile phone, on your smartphone. So, you know, that's the sort of smart mirror of today. You know, whether we see the science fiction scenarios as a little you know, it's maybe a little farther out.
I know IKEA have done some work around AR as well, where you can see a piece of furniture in situ in your room or in your house, and I think that's a very tangible sort of approach for AR. I think it's really smart.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything you could, you know, the purpose of a store is so that, well, beyond them being the place where you bought stuff, but especially with something like furniture, you really need to sit in the chair or see and touch the rug,
Yes.
and unless you can just return things quite easily, which is hard with furniture. But I agree with you. Anything that makes the digital commerce experience more tactile or brings the object into a more concrete focus for you. I had an interesting, I did that with a rug on the Crate and Barrel. I think it was the Crate and Barrel app, where I could put a rug in my living room, and it actually allowed the furniture under the rug to be viewed. Interestingly, so it replaced the existing rug with something underneath.
Wow.
It was quite effective,
Wow.
and it really got me very close to buying this particular rug because oh yes, it looks good in my room and it's a good price, and so that kind
Yeah.
of stuff I think is really meaningful. It moves beyond novelty into the realm of being really effective as a selling tool.
Yeah, it's just really useful in terms of, buying a couch and not knowing if it's going to fit in your living room. If you're in the actual furniture store, you're not sure if, that size will really fit, where you need it to go. So having the AR really could be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so even in that case, even in the it's not just a replacement for the store experience; it becomes a supplement to it, and really helps helps you when you get back home after having seen it.
Great. So, what do you think are some of the more enterprise level trendsetters that have made e commerce and omnichannel really easy for consumers, especially during the past year where we've sort of been forced to buy everything online?
Well, so there are probably too many to name. I mean, I think as we were discussing during the chat prior to the podcast here, really what's emerged in the U.S. at least, and this is maybe true to some degree in Europe, is we have some real leaders and then laggards, right? I mean, the U.S. retail market has been under pressure for years: store closures, bankruptcies, all kinds of stuff like that. The market's been in distress. Square footage, square kilometers are overbuilt, so people are closing stores. But what happened is that many retailers really took the omni-channel concept and it put it into practice, implemented it. So buy online, pick up in store, or click and collect, as it's called in the UK. Um, Curbside pickup, a version of that, really boomed. I mean, there was a Shopify report, I believe, that said something like 100,000 brands, which I assume are retail locations or retailers, um, adopted curbside pickup or click and collect during coronavirus. And so you buy something online and then you pick it up the same day. And so companies like Target and Walmart and Costco, and Best Buy in the U.S., the electronics retailer to some degree, but Target and Walmart in particular are really succeeding. Target reported, I think, in their last quarterly earnings statement that just triple digit e-commerce growth, but they fulfilled 95% of those orders from the store. So the store became the warehouse in effect. And that saves money for them because they're not shipping directly to the consumer. Um, but they're also able to deliver the convenience of the online shopping experience and the immediacy of the traditional store experience. So that hybrid model of online and offline, that's very definitely here to stay. To your earlier point, Keith, I mean, I think that the consumers have now developed this. Omnichannel, as we said, was a term that has been around for a long time, but really they're making it real now. This is it
Yeah.
means convenience to the consumer. I have a lot of choices. I go online, I can buy it online and have it shipped to me. I can pick it up today. It's that's the sort of hallmark of the future, is really incredibly convenient shopping for consumers.
I'm guessing the retailer's also thinking, if I can get that person into the store when they're collecting this item, I have an opportunity to sell them this and this and this while
That
they're there
that's
as
that's
well.
a, that's always been true, and that's been a feature of returns. That's why in-store returns have been so valuable to retailers, because you go to return a single item and then, oh look, this is on sale, or I need one of these. And this is so the U.S. department store Kohl's has a deal with Amazon that many people may know about, where you can go to Kohl's and return Amazon products. And I did it this year for the first time. It's incredibly convenient. And in fact, my wife and I did buy some sheets as a byproduct of that store visit. And so, stores are quite strategic. I mean, the narrative is now e-commerce is eating everything. Stores are going under. Nobody's going to shop in stores anymore. That's just not true at all. I think different retailers, many retailers are expanding their store footprint, even as others are closing. And so there's a complicated story there, and also direct to consumer brands are moving into the physical world. That's been a trend for the last several years, and it's to some degree it's a necessity. If you're a direct to consumer brand and you don't have some sort of offline presence, that can be within another store or a pop-up store. That probably suffices in some cases. You're probably not going to survive over time. You will need a foothold in both the real world and obviously the digital world. And so only retailers that have both are gonna survive over the long term. Like Primark in the UK doesn't have
Yes.
any e-commerce. Apparently, on track to lose £1 billion. No e-commerce at all. They have a website. You can look at some of their stuff, but you can't buy it. It's emerged as an incredible strategic mistake.
Interesting.
So, on that note, in terms of trends, you had mentioned in our talk before the podcast about real-time product inventory management, and that's definitely something that's really useful for consumers, just being able to check if something is in stock before they go into the store. Do you want to comment a bit more about that?
Sure. I mean, I think that's always been something that's been interesting to consumers, but not on the radar of many of the on the enterprise side or the small business side. And for more than 10 years, different companies have been trying to solve that inventory problem. And Google with its Merchant Center and merchant feeds, over the last 4 or 5 years, made it available to enterprises where they'll now show you in their shopping carousel what's in stock, what's in store. And that's it's a differentiator. If you're up against 20 e-commerce, 20 tiles where everything is more or less the same, but somebody has that in-store pin, that's a big deal. And now ultimately the consumer may buy it online, but it's something that they're interested in. And Google has lots of data, and other people have lots of data about how majorities of consumers want to check that something's in stock before they buy something or before they go and get it. And that became especially true during the pandemic. The small business market has been much, much tougher to crack. And the reason for that is because they don't have sophisticated tools they don't have merchant feeds. They don't have their inventory in a form that makes it possible to pump it into Google or other places. But there are a number of startups that are working on that. Most prominently, Pointy, which was based in Ireland and was bought by Google last year, I believe, in maybe early 2020. I don't remember specifically. They had just an incredibly elegant solution and enable small businesses to get their inventory online. And then you can do a bunch of things with it. You can put it into Google, product, organic product feeds. You can put it on a landing page. You can do all kinds of stuff. There's another company, Last Mile Retail in the US, that does that. Works primarily with enterprises. And then there's another one recently in the UK that I came across, whose name is escaping me now. But this is something that consumers fundamentally want, and it's a way for smaller retailers and for large retailers to compete with Amazon. Why do you shop at Amazon? Because you're going to get the product that you're looking for, or a comparable product. You don't have any question about its availability. And so to the extent that people want to shop locally with small businesses, to the extent that you get inventory information online, that's a way to satisfy the consumer need for immediacy and convenience, and allow them to sort of fulfill their abstract kind of pledge to shop locally. Because we do have a kind of a gap between what consumers say very often and what they actually do. I want to support local business. I want to shop locally, but yet I'm going to buy it on Amazon because it's just very easy. So you have to make it really easy for shoppers today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And on that note of making things easier for people, such as, when, a local shop is open, Google My Business is obviously something that small businesses need to be aware of. And I'm really surprised about how many people are not using the free tools that are provided, like Google My Business and listings on Google Maps, and just how important these tools are, and they're free. So if you want to comment maybe on just, some things to keep in mind about leveraging these two tools for small businesses, especially for e-commerce.
Right. So Google My Business is arguably the most important single tool that exists for local businesses, for small businesses, and for in many cases for, I mean, increasingly people are not, this bifurcation between e-commerce and traditional offline commerce is going away. You have to use Google My Business. Most of it, it's all free. I mean, Google has paid elements that sort of creep in at the margins. But we won't get into that now. But it's a very important tool. Claim the listing, fully populate it with all your information. Photos, incredibly important. Reviews, very, very important. They impact rankings. There's Google Posts. There's products. You can upload your products to Google My Business. This is the number one tool that consumers are using as they sort of get closer to the bottom of the funnel, top of the funnel. I mean, they use it throughout, right? Awareness, consideration, and then, where can I buy something? So if you're not, you have to use it. It's really more important even than Facebook, even though most small businesses now favor Facebook over Google My Business. I can go into more detail, but that's sort of the high level. Yes, use it. You must claim it. If you're not, it's a kind of it's a huge missed opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
You're missing. You're losing out if you haven't fully embraced Google My Business.
Yeah, absolutely. And just in terms of reviews that go on Google My Business, do you think it's really important for a new business to push heavily for good reviews without incentivizing, of course, but just, emailing customers, just being like, hey, please review? Or do you think that if the business is good, people will just naturally leave reviews on their own?
Yes and yes. If the business is good, people will leave reviews, but you need to ask for reviews. I mean, this is something that in the United States, Yelp does not want you to do, but it's ethical to ask your customers for reviews, and you should, because if you ask 100% of your customers for reviews, a very substantial portion of them will give you reviews, and most of those reviews will be positive. Plus, it's important for you to see what your customer feedback. It's very important. I mean, there are different mechanisms to get private customer feedback, but reviews are sort of a treasure trove of information about your business that you can learn from. But it's an element of Google rankings. So positive reviews and review volume combine to enable you to rank higher. There's growing review fraud because of that. But it's very important for you to ask in an ethical way for your customers to review you, and they will.
I think it's also interesting to understand how retailers and suppliers manage negative reviews. So I kind of find it fascinating sometimes to see the way that they approach a negative review, and it can really give you a sense of confidence in the business and the way they respond to that, how fair they are about it, and how balanced they are, and that can often be a great insight into how authentic that business is, I guess.
And some number of future customers are looking to see how that business responds to negative reviews. One of the things that's true about Google My Business is that most of the companies that have accounts are not responding to their reviews. We do see ones that do, but the majority are not, and it's really a missed opportunity. It's also the case that consumers expect a response to their critical review, and a large percentage of them will change it depending upon your response. So if you have a problem and the business addresses it within a window of time, which is usually 24 hours or less, depending on how heated the review is, they may change it. I mean, this is sort of a cliche in the world of customer service. But if you win back somebody who's had a bad experience, often that person becomes a real advocate for your business. But the statistics show that up to 80+% of people are willing to reconsider if you address their problem, because most people are reasonable and they just really want to be heard. And really, a review is a conversation. They're trying to tell you something, and if you respond to it, they very often will fix their review.
Yep, it's just another touch point with the customer base that we should definitely make sure we're taking advantage of.
Without question. I mean, it's something that, populate your Google My Business profile, ask customers for reviews, respond to reviews. Absolutely. Google recommends all of this.
Super. That was all like really, really interesting stuff. Unfortunately, we are running out of time for today. So, Greg, I'll ask you to close with if there's one thing that our listeners, just one thing that they can implement that will help them accelerate their business. It can be a specific thing, it can be a big picture thing, just something you'd like for them to, come away with.
So, there are a lot of things we could talk about. I would say they have to get closer to their customer. They need to understand who their customer is. They need to I mean, it's a cliche to talk about being customer centric, but it's really true. You need to really get much closer to your customer and develop a relationship with your customer. And that's something that a lot of small businesses are very good at. They just have to take that online now. You have to have a website, and you have to have capabilities on your website that enable a more a richer and better experience. Make it easy for the customer. Convenience is sort of the watchword of the new digital economy. Make it easy for the customer to do business with you, to find the information she or he needs to conduct the transaction. And you have to be online and offline, unless you're just purely e-commerce. You have to have a foot in both worlds and recognize, that the consumer is agnostic and they want to do business in both places. And so you have to make it possible for them. And to the extent you can bring those two things together, it's not easy to execute this. And there are a lot of tools out there. There are a lot of website builders and a lot of commerce tools. And of course, we talked about Shopify. But you really just have to think about how to make it easier for your customer to do business with you and remove the barriers, remove the friction. And they want to do business with you. Just make it easier for them to do that. That's not been something that a lot of small businesses in particular have thought about. Very often you get to a small business website and you can't find the phone number, or that it's hard to get the contact details, that kind of thing. Yeah. And Google My Business, absolutely. That's the one concrete takeaway. Before everything else, Google My Business.
Super. Great tips there. Well, thank you so much, Greg and Keith, for being on the show today. It's been a pleasure talking with you both.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. I given my level of energy and the general absence of caffeine in my system, I've really enjoyed the conversation. So hopefully we can
meeting you, Greg.
Yeah, hopefully we can do it again in some form.
Well, thank you so much, and we'll hope to have you back someday. That was a great chat we just had with Greg Sterling about Google My Business, the importance of reviews, and some tips on getting noticed as a small business. So make sure to follow him for regular updates on everything local search on Twitter with the handle @gsterling. And thank you for joining us on Optly Radio, the podcast that's here to help you accelerate your e-commerce marketing success. If you've enjoyed today's chat with Greg, please make sure to subscribe to our show on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, and also check out the video cast on Optly's YouTube channel. So join us again in 2 weeks when we'll have Kelly Vaughn in to talk about everything Shopify, how to get going, and lessons learned from other experts and small businesses. She's the founder of The Tap Room, a Shopify agency, and host of the Ladybug podcast and Commerce Tea. You won't want to miss this chat. And don't forget to follow us on social media at Optily Global for regular updates, and do also visit our site, optily.com. We've got tons of resources for digital marketing strategy, content creation, and the latest big news summarized and explained in bite-sized articles. So stay safe, and we'll catch you next time on Optily Radio.